Hey everybody, welcome to episode 90 of Is That Normal podcast, and today we're going to talk about the importance of studying.
Yes, so Randall, it's probably been a while. I know it has been for me, and it probably has for you. Been a long while since I've been a formal
20 years this year, actually.
Student, yes, yeah. 20 years since you've been in school. Yeah, that's
high school anyway.
That's a milestone.
It is a milestone.
That's really good. So it's been a while since we've been formal students. So we have to, some of us might have to think back at least 20 years, but so what were some of your favorite classes when you were in school, and why?
Man, I love history. Still do. I just love learning about things that have happened in the past, and even how that, how those things shaped what has happened, after that, and even today. And so that was always just like something I was super passionate about. I love studying history. I really loved, maybe not so much like English grammar stuff specifically, but I really loved anything that involved reading and writing, and so literature, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Math not so much, but history, literature, that type of stuff, that was right up my alley.
Words and stories,
yes,
like that
absolutely.
That hits you. You like that, yeah. That's really good. I like to learn. I loved school. It was something I really enjoyed, and so I enjoyed most of my classes, really. But probably the things I always gravitated to the most were the science classes. I loved science. And as I got into high school, I really liked it when we got to like chemistry and physics, because for me, it began really opening my eyes up to how things worked. And I love to know how things work and why they operate and what the purpose is behind the different parts of the world and the way life works. And so I love that study of like, we're going to investigate how everything works. And I just love that. Yeah.
And especially in that realm, when you're talking about science and things like that, it's important to continually be learning, because, if we thought we had reached the apex of knowledge, we would be way behind on discoveries of new things and things that we've learned as people continue to research and discover new things. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and talk a little bit about why it's important to continually be learning, even for us in our daily lives.
Yes, I know both of us, just even in the process of doing this, we both have just shown that we're lifelong learners. We love to read, we love new information, we want to be on top of current trends so we can respond to them correctly. And so so we have both have had that process or that habit of being lifelong learners, and I think that's important for everybody, but particularly as we talk to our parents today, I think it is really critical that we be lifelong learners, and today we're going to talk about why that is.
Well, welcome back to the Is That Normal podcast, and we're glad you've joined us. And we say this a lot, but we really love for this to be a conversation.
Yes.
So we would love to hear from you. You can comment on our social media post, on wherever you're consuming this podcast. You can email us at connect@isthatnormal.org. And we just love to hear, any feedback you have, questions you have, stories, just anything that stood out from the podcast. We just love for this to be a two-way conversation. So check that out. And then, as we talked about, today we're talking about lifelong learning. So Mark, why is it important specifically for parents to be lifelong learners?
So you can stay ahead of your kids. and I say that a little jokingly, but not completely jokingly. One of the things that I've tried to stay abreast of, both as a youth pastor and as a parent, is a little bit about what's going on in culture. What's popular, what's trending, what entertainment and media is influencing the way young people think. That's kind of important. Not that you just want to sit around and watch TikTok and listen to hip hop all day. That's probably not what the best practice is, but to at least be aware of what those things are and what kind of voices are speaking into our young culture today. I think that's helpful. Just even helping your kids with education. Education is changing. Like you mentioned, first of all, science is always being updated. History is always being added to the philosophy of education that's coming out is changing. And we won't address that specifically because there's lots of polarizing opinions about that right now. Maybe we'll talk about that in another podcast, but just to know what's going on so you can be involved in your child's education. So we need to be students of education. And another one is mental health concerns. And we've talked about that on this podcast a lot. I was actually talking to a high school teacher just today, and they were talking to me about the percentage of what their time is spent doing. And they said, there's a really large, significant portion of my days that are spent helping my kids navigate their mental health issues so that they can get to a place where they can be educated. Yeah. And, it's a big deal. We need to be aware of what it is. We need to be aware of the warning signs. We need to be aware of how to have good conversations and how to get our kids help, which we have a whole podcast about that just a few episodes ago about finding the right help for your kids and navigating that. So those are things to be students of. I know that I have been a big student of that. We've done that. We've looked a lot of cultural, generational sociology. There's a lot of great books that we've talked about. We've talked a lot about mental health and how to look at that. So look back through our archives and there's some good info there. But today I want to kind of boil all that down. Those are all good things, but the most important, and if you're going to go anywhere, the place to start on being a student and a lifelong learner for parenting is the spiritual development of you and your family. Yeah. That is just the most important thing that we can do is spiritually parent our kids.
Yeah. So when you say spiritually parenting our kids, what do you mean by that?
Our number one job as people who God has blessed with young lives to influence is to raise them up to know Jesus and to follow Jesus. That's number one priority in my life. Education is great. Health is great career. That's all good. But before all of that, and maybe at the foundation of all of that, is helping my kids know what it means to know the Lord and to follow Him and serve Him with their lives.
So how do we become a student of that? What does being a student of that look like?
It starts with our own spiritual development, really. It starts with me recognizing how important that is for me to have a relationship with God and making sure that I'm working on that and that I'm building that. I need to continue, no matter where I'm at, growing in how vibrant my relationship with God is. Whether I'm already feel like, man, I'm really doing well at that, or I'm not really on my radar. Either way, we need to continue growing that. And that's done mainly through spiritual disciplines, like learn to read your Bible regularly, learn to pray regularly, learn how to serve in your local church and community regularly. And so as we do that, then we need to start teaching ourselves God's principles and His principles for parenting. So that should be a part of our own spiritual development, is saying, hey, God, what you blessed me with these kids now. What do you want me to do with them, and how do you want me to lead them, and what I might need to be doing to instill your principles in them, and what are your principles? So those are questions we need to be answering in our own spiritual life. So, some great places to start is to read through the Gospels, to see who Jesus is and what He has said. And then as you do that, then eventually read the entirety of the New Testament, which really just has a lot to do with what it looks like to live in the kingdom of God with Christ as our Savior and our leader. So and actually we just gave the elementary school parents at our church a book to help them do that. And then we've also made aware our parents who have teens or just individuals who want to learn how to read through the New Testament. The Foundation's New Testament, a 260-day Bible reading plan for busy believers by Robbie and Candy Gallaty is a great, really easy guide to just help you walk through in about a year through the whole New Testament. So it starts with the Gospels and walks you through those things. And so we'll have links to that on there. So that's a great place to start. Another great thing, if we're trying to learn how to know God's principles and apply them to our parenting, is to read through Proverbs. I know when I was in college, I got challenged that there's 31 Proverbs and there's no more than 31 days in any month. And so if I read the proverb that goes along with the date of this month every month, then, man, I'm going to read through a lot of Proverbs. And if you look through Proverbs, it was really mostly King Solomon writing things down for his sons to learn what it looked like to live life. And so this is like, hey, this is me, the teacher, giving you my son's wisdom. And so there's a whole lot of life and parenting principles in there.
Yeah.
That's where we get the, train up our child in the way you should go and he won't depart from it. Well, that's Proverbs, and that's the purpose of Proverbs, is to help you do that better. So those are good. And then one other place in the Bible that's huge as far as we think about family discipleship is Deuteronomy. Kind of the foundation of family worship is in Deuteronomy chapter 6, and really the entirety of Deuteronomy is about how to pass on your faith to the next generation. And if you don't attend our church, you don't know this, but we just went through Deuteronomy on Sunday mornings in our church, and so we'll put a link to those sermons, that sermon files in our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and watch some of the things that we did to just kind of help families know how to start that family discipleship. So yeah,
absolutely. So you have other suggestions to help with parenting and discipleship?
Yeah, so I mean, everything should start with that spiritual development and read the Bible, and then really eventually learning to read the Bible with your family and encourage your family to read the Bible. So all of those tools I just talked about, you start with that with yourself, and then you spread that to your family. But I think also for us as parents, we need to be hearing other voices and other perspectives on maybe some great ways to shepherd and steer our families. And so we've talked a lot about Fuller Youth Institute's books. Man, that stuff has been super helpful for me, not just as a pastor, but as a parent. The Growing With book and the 3 Big Questions Every Teenager Must Answer book, those have been really good. The Family Discipleship book by Matt Chandler and Adam Griffin. Again, we did a review on this about a year ago, and it's a very practical, here's how to do family discipleship, and it walks you through some really great ideas on how to make that happen in several ways. So that's a really good resource. Growing Spiritual Grit. Man, this is a fantastic resource. So there's a book that you can read, and then there's a devotion that either you can do with or have your teenagers do. But it's just all about how our faith should establish this perseverance in us and this strength in us and what that looks like. And, I think as we look at what's going on in our world and our culture and with our kids, this is a huge thing. We need to teach them how to let their faith be a true firm foundation for them. So that's a great resource. And then
I'm excited about this.
And then one of my favorites, again, this is one of early podcasts. We reviewed this book, but by Walker Moore, Dr. Walker Moore's You Want to Pierce What? And man, this is such a cool book. I read this I don't even think I had kids yet the first time I read this. And it is just so neat about how to train your kids to make their own decisions and stand on their own 2 feet. And that's where we talked about rites of passage. That's a big thing for Walker, which we actually just re-aired that episode just a little while ago. But yeah, great stuff. So some great places to maybe kind of start depending on what your needs are right now.
So how does all this equate to being a student? Because it's easy, we end up with piles of books, myself included, of books that I'm going to read, and I have full intentions of going through and studying.
Yes.
And they're really just dust collectors.
Yeah, Amazon's really helped me with that because I've got Amazon on my phone. Someone tells me, "Hey, this is a great book," and it's somebody I trust. I'm like, "Really? I'm gonna buy that right now." And that can get out of hand for me. But on the other end of it is sometimes then I get a pile of books and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I even bought that. I meant to read that, kind of a thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that can be a challenge. Good intentions are not always fully played out. So and as we talk about all this, it's definitely hard to be a student. Life is busy. I was talking to someone else today about that. About man. Some days I just don't feel like I have the time to take the breath I need to. How do I create more margin? And I know people's lives are busy. It's definitely work to get to this place, and none of us are going to do it perfectly. I still have those piles of books that I mean to get to, but I grow a little bit in each year. I've read more books so far this year than I did at this point last year, and the same the year before. So I've grown in being that student. But what it took to do that was being really intentional. But what I found is when I do that, it's totally worth it. So I think it started for me, though, the first place that all this starts, I'm back to my science. I like to know why things work, is to understand how important it is that I spiritually parent my children. I know when we made the decision to homeschool our children, that was the largest factor in all of that, was we got to the point where we realized my greatest responsibility is to make sure that they know the Lord. And there's no one poised to do that better than I am. And so if I have the ability and resources to do this, I should do this. And so that's why we made that decision, is because we wanted to be influence our children first and foremost to love Jesus. And so the more time we have with them, we hope that can go. And so, something interesting we shared a couple weeks ago on our Facebook page was an infographic I found about the top reasons adults stay in church rather than the large percentage of children after they get out of high school who leave church. And it was all stuff like ate dinner with my family, read the Bible with my family, served at church with my family, sat at church with my family. It was all about like families doing ministry and worship together and making that a part of their weekly, daily routine. And I know we've seen that firsthand here. The people who are adults here going to church that grew up in our youth group, a lot of them, it's because their families were families who are also coming to church and also doing those things right alongside them. So that's why, like for me, like, why should I be a student? How do I do that successfully? Well, remember that this is like life and death. This is like my children's eternal future. So it's important. So I'm going to do it if it's important. So, but here's some steps. So that's a lot of philosophy, but here's some steps that I found is, first of all, you pick a place to start. So we've given some ideas today, some resources. Don't buy all of them. Yeah. Pick one and say, that sounds interesting. I'm going to start there.
Yeah.
And so that's really good. And then as you do it, start making this plan for pacing and goals. I've actually gotten to this place where I kind of calendar out what books I'm going to read at what part of the year and what I'm going to read next, and just kind of start beginning a plan for myself, as well as how fast do I want to read this, and trying to be realistic in that. So that's good. And then coming up with a system for taking good notes, man, that has been huge for me. And for me, I'm a digital guy. And so I've gotten to where I make a note on my phone for every book I'm reading, and then I put the chapter heading, and then I just put bullet points of things that are important. I used to highlight, and I still do a little bit, but then I'd go back and I have to thumb through and wait, where was that highlight at? And so now I've got it where it's a little bit more cataloged.
And it's always with you.
And it's always with me, right? And then seek accountability. There's rarely a time that I'm reading a book that I haven't asked someone else to read alongside me, so that we can kind of keep each other accountable. Like, hey, how far are you? Like, what are you reading? Like, what are you interested in? And, we're never like, it's not a shame culture of like, you didn't read 3 chapters this week. It's more like, I didn't get quite that far, but man, I was interested in this. It's just to create that camaraderie of learning together. So find some other parents that are in the same life stage as you. Pick a resource, start reading it together. Good. I mean, I think that's helping each other out. And then look for opportunities for conversations, applications with your family. Like, I know you don't want to your kids might not be interested in a book club with you. Surprise. but if there's things that like, that hits you in that, or questions that come up that maybe you think, hey, I could ask them like what they think about that, and like make them be the expert in something you're reading, man, just start that conversation. And then, like I said, some of these are going to talk about practical things to do in your household. Pick some of those things, start doing them.
Yeah. Good stuff. So how about finding new material to study?
Yeah, several thoughts. I try to keep reading the Bible in varied ways. When I tell people, once I get done reading the Bible, then I start reading the Bible again. But when I do it, I might read it in a different way this time. I might not read it in the same order that I read it in last time. I might read it faster or slower than I read it last time. But yeah, so just try to look at, continuing to read the Bible, but look at it as some new ways to how you're going to engage with that. Seek recommendations from trusted people. A lot of books I buy is because someone says, man, this book was great, or this book helped me, or this book has this point to it. And so that's how I find a lot of resources. And, and that can be someone or that can be, looking at trusted podcasts or information sources that are recommending things. Watch for new material from trusted resources. So, so I kind of gotten this, this scope, and like anything that comes out from Fuller Youth Institute, I'm going to take notice. Like D6, the Randall House Publishing Company, they have a heartbeat of doing this, like investing in families, helping family discipleship. And so if they have something new about kids or family worship, like I tend to get it. Like, so just dropped, like just a couple weeks ago, this book, For the Faith of the Next Generation, a resource for ministry leaders and parents. I've not read it yet. Probably read it. We'll probably talk about it on here at some point. But I just know that I trust them, that they've got good info, and so I picked it up because I know that there's probably good information in there. And then practice variety. The probably the worst thing you can do is always read the same stuff by the same people. Yeah. You need to create some variety. So that's why I don't read just one author or just one publishing house. I try to create some variety to get some perspective. So
yeah, so we start doing our homework. So
Yep.
so what are some of the benefits of all this studying?
right. So for me, it keeps me constantly mindful and prepared to engage my family in learning and applying God's truth. So this keeps it fresh. It keeps it on my mind. And the more I read and the more I study and the more I try to apply these things, the more that becomes my passion and my heartbeat and what I think about and what I'm pondering and what I'm wrestling with. And that's going to make it be what I am trying to do that, to talk about and wrestle with my family.
Yeah.
And so it just keeps that really fresh, as well as, you're going to get new insights. You're going to get ideas you didn't have before. It's kind of a great way to be collaborating with other people who are trying to do the same thing. And then one of the coolest unexpected things is watching my kids. While it won't come out in the way that you maybe expect or even want it to, I've watched my kids learn how to learn because they've watched me do it. And so, especially as my kids have gotten in their teen years and adult years, I've watched them do those things I talked about. Even though I didn't necessarily sit down and tell them some of those things, they watched me in the way I tend to learn, and they've picked that up. And that's exciting because I want my kids to know the Lord, and I know to know the Lord means they have to be lifelong learners. So that's one of my goals for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. So as we wrap up today, our 2 takeaways. First is to pick a resource and start studying. And if there's maybe something specific that you want to learn more about, or you want to research that maybe we haven't covered or you're not sure about, let us know. We can point you in the right direction. And then the second thing is to send us a line and communicate with us. Let us know what you are currently learning.
Yep. Be abnormal.